to go to a conflict zone and, oh heavens me, my passport, dude, that you die. You go to conflict zones, you assume the risks of who you are and what you are. And this idea that you are entitled to some special privilege to go to a foreign country where you may be killed in any circumstance is laughably insane. To subvert their laws, which have specific gendered laws. You say, I should have a government document that lies so I can break the law in that country is an absurdity.
It just doesn't make any sense to me.
Should have a right to commit crimes in other countries, yes or no?
That's not what I've said.
I'm not saying you are, but is the answer no?
No.
So Americans should not be able to break the law in other countries.
Correct.
Even when those laws are bullshit. This is why men are leaving.
I'm answering your questions directly, and I'm not pivoting away from them.
You are.
You just don't like my answers, which is totally okay.
A male who says I'm female is lying. Because we're talking about biological sex.
Yeah, not. They're just not face valid. They're not face valid, right?
Like,
Do you know what that means?
You've made a claim that you've backtracked a little bit when you fluttered between gender and sex. You then said that we should change passports to be gender, not sex. You acknowledge that sex is different.
Sure, yeah. I shouldn't have baked in extra arguments.
Look, I'm about to show you one of the most insane debates I've seen in a while. Tim Pool is sitting across from Kyla Turner, and she's trying to defend why the US government should put fake biological sex markers on passports so trans people can lie to foreign countries. I'm not making this up. She literally argues that America should help its citizens commit fraud to enter nations that have laws we don't agree with. And Tim absolutely demolishes her on this. Like, she keeps backtracking, changing definitions mid-sentence, and you can see the exact moment she realizes how bad her argument is. This is why young men are fleeing the left in record numbers. You're watching someone defend government-sanctioned lying to sovereign nations because feelings matter more than reality. Let's get into it.
That's just not, that's dangerous for trans people. If you've got, if you want to do, I'm running into this with a friend right now who tries to do war correspondence in countries that don't like trans people. She, in every way, is a woman. Nobody would look at her and think that that person should walk into a male bathroom. But because she's trans, she has an M on her passport, and she now cannot go into multiple very conservative countries because of threats to her life.
Well, to be fair,
I mean, she'd be under, in the first place. He'd be under threat if they went anyways.
No, she wouldn't, because most people, first of all, she was not super out about her transness. Most people never knew at all. And she has gone into these countries numerous of times in the past. She can't anymore at all because of this passport change. That isn't helping trans people. That is fundamentally.
That just seems like a self-inflicted.
But regardless,
how is this self-inflicted at all?
I mean, you're choosing to go to those zones.
She's a war correspondent as her career. Anyways. Yes, she goes to Iraq, but she's always gone to Iraq.
You know, I'll concede this is a lefty position, and it is, I would refer to as, I don't know what's the right way to describe this, farcical, fantastical. I did conflict reporting. I didn't go to any active war zones. I went to civil war and like conflict and crisis and disaster zones. And it was always fascinating to me because of this political correctness reality, especially pertaining to HR and stuff. The story that I usually tell is I was doing what's called heat training. It's redundant. Heat includes the word training. Hostile environment action training. And they couldn't actually tell the women not to go to these zones and prepare them for what happens to women in war zones because they'd get sued if they did. And so someone asked this former MI6 guy, should women who go into conflict zones be concerned about rape? And he went, men get raped. Men get raped. You know, anyway, so moving on. Because he literally couldn't say, if you're a woman, you go to a war zone and you're captured, you'll be mercilessly raped and sold into slavery. And if you're a man, you probably won't be.
You'll be killed.
Because if he did, that would be sexual discrimination in a work environment because this is a contracted company for insurance providers and media outlets. He's not allowed to say these things. So stupid. The idea that a trans person thinks they have a right to go to a conflict zone and, oh, heavens me, my passport, dude, that you die. You go to conflict zones, you assume the risks of who you are and what you are. And this idea that you are entitled to some special privilege to go to a foreign country where you may be killed in any circumstance is laughably insane.
What's the benefit of changing any of these passport things except for
1993, there was a law passed in the United States because forever, when medical testing was done for drugs, they did not do it on women. And so when women would go to the hospital with pain, they'd say, take this painkiller. And the woman would say, it hurts. And they go, women are such fucking babies. And then they were like, hey, maybe drugs work differently on men and women due to physiology. So they passed a law saying from now on, medical research has to be done on both men and women because we are just kind of realizing the drugs work differently on women. So if someone considering men and women have different organs, quite literally, there's a reason for why we designate your gender
on your passport.
On every, it's an ID.
Why on my passport does it need to say for somebody who in every single way, it's like Blair White,
sure.
Look at them and say, it looks like a woman.
Are women allowed to walk around outside in Islamic nations? Without a man?
I was going to say with a man and usually covered, yes.
So with a man. So if a female decides to get a visa to...
Do you think that a Blair White could walk around in Islamic countries without a man because they'd be like, well, she's trans? No, of course not.
Of course not.
So the war correspondent is already going...
I think you have a right to subvert the laws of a foreign nation that has invited you into their country.
How is it subverting the laws?
Lying to subvert their laws, which have specific gendered laws. You say, I should have a government document that lies so I can break the law in that country. Is an absurdity.
It just doesn't make any sense to me. The laws that they would be breaking is that if Blair White has M on their passport, I guess Blair should be walking around without head coverings and wearing like keffiyeh and not having a person, which they would kill her for because they would see a woman.
What right do you have to someone else's nation? I don't understand.
This isn't about a right. This is about your own country granting you the ability to exist and perform in the way that every single person is going to treat you.
We're talking specifically about your friend who wants to go to conflict zones in foreign countries and lie to their government to get privy to access.
You have the right to go and do your work.
You do not have a right to someone else's nation. They grant you a privilege to enter under visa.
Sure, but the issue is that you're making it seem like I would grant you that if it was the other nations getting mad at America, being like, put M on trans passports. But that's not what happened. Trump made the decision himself, unrelated to any external pressures. I'm not even sure why.
You said they could be killed.
They could be killed if Blair White...
Would the government take action against this person?
They probably would get in major trouble at the border at all.
Agreed.
They would.
So you're asking the U.S. government to produce a false document to lie to a foreign government so they can get a visa.
Are you saying that it was a false document before, that the government was just lying this entire time?
If you're a man and they put female on your passport, they're lying.
Yeah. Well, if you put gender and put woman... Isn't that fine?
There's no W. It's male or female. Those are sexes. It's biology.
Sure, but couldn't we just update the...
Okay, so hold on. Let me break down what just happened here, because this is absolutely insane. Kyla just spent the last few minutes arguing that her friend, a trans war correspondent, should be able to have an F on her passport even though she's biologically male. And her justification? Because otherwise, this person can't travel to countries like Iraq for work. And Tim immediately clocks the obvious problem. You're asking the American government to produce a false document to help someone bypass the laws of a foreign country. Like, think about that for a second. She wants official US documentation to lie about biological reality so her friend can enter nations that have specific laws based on sex. And when Tim points this out, she tries to pivot to, well, it's not lying if the government agrees to it. Dude, that's not how truth works. If a man is a man and you put female on his passport, that's a lie. The government agreeing to the lie doesn't make it not a lie. It just makes it an official lie. And here's the thing. Kyla knows this. She's not stupid. She tries to flip between sex and gender halfway through because she realizes her argument is collapsing. She says, well, maybe we should just put gender on passports instead of sex, which Tim immediately shuts down because that's not what we're debating. We're debating whether biological males should have female markers on official government IDs used for international travel. And the answer is obviously no. But what really gets me is the entitlement here. She genuinely believes Americans have some kind of right to enter foreign countries and break their laws as long as we don't personally agree with those laws. Like, she brings up Islamic countries that require women to be covered and escorted by men. And she's like, well, Blair White looks like a woman, so she should be able to walk around freely. Okay, cool. Except that country's law says if you're male, you follow male rules. You don't get to subvert their sovereignty because you transitioned. And when Tim asks her point blank, do you think Americans should be able to break the law in other countries? She says no. But then she immediately contradicts herself by saying the government should help trans people do exactly that. It's so obvious, man. This is the kind of circular logic that's pushing normal people away from the left. You can't have a coherent principle when your entire worldview is built on my feelings override reality and everyone else has to play along. Let me know in the comments what you guys think about this.
No, those are sexes. It's biology.
Sure, but couldn't we just update the passport to be gender?
No.
Why not?
Because we're identifying a biological structure of human beings for a purpose because different laws.
On the passport?
Indeed, it's an ID. And we have international treaties with foreign nations because they have different laws than us. This idea that Americans get to go and do whatever they want whenever they want is so stupid.
That's not what I'm advocating for.
You think an American male should be able to get a passport that says they're a female so they can enter a country where it's illegal and do things that are otherwise illegal?
I think that the idea that, like you were basically saying that Trump is pro-trans in every way. And I said...
I didn't say he was pro-trans.
You said that he was very
moderate on the issue.
Yeah, exactly. And I said he immediately did something that actually has security and life threats against your civilians. You know what the American government has responsibility for? Protecting its citizens.
What does that have to do with entering a foreign country under sovereign jurisdiction?
Because you're still an American citizen that the government has a procedure to protect. So if that trans person goes, you know what? I'll embrace that.
Why?
Larry White goes, it should say M on my passport, and then goes in. Does the American government have to go rescue her when she inevitably gets attacked and assaulted? Or does she just have to give up on her career as a war correspondent?
Yes, you do. You're not entitled to these things. This is weird.
It's such a wild thing for you to say. It's totally chill that the American government can just be like, nah, you're not allowed to do your
I think you're lying.
Anymore. I'm not lying.
You think Americans should have a right to commit crimes in other countries, yes or no?
That's not what I've said.
I'm not saying you are, but is the answer no?
No.
So Americans should not be able to break the law in other countries.
Correct.
Even when those laws are bullshit.
By and large. And the American government should protect you when you do it.
Don't go to, where is it, like Dubai. They have, like, if a woman gets raped in Dubai, you go to prison. Okay. So is it illegal for women to walk around in these countries? It is, right?
Yeah, without the male and et cetera, yes.
So if a female dresses up like a man and takes hormones to mask it to the government, like let's say a woman in Saudi Arabia starts illicitly taking testosterone to appear like a man to go around and break, they would get in trouble for that, wouldn't they?
Probably not if they passed well enough because nobody would know.
No, I'm saying when they got caught, it's a crime. It is illegal to do.
Because they're trans, yeah.
So I don't understand how you're arguing.
Trans. You're basically saying that trans people just shouldn't go where they're not, where it's illegal for them to exist. That's what you're saying.
Why would you? Well, hold on.
Any reason that you might want to do war correspondence? What do you mean?
Do you recognize that war correspondents can die?
Yeah.
So I don't understand what your point is.
My point is that you should
people have a right to go to foreign war zones without the risk of death, and they should be able to,
not what I'm advocating for. They have a right to be able to go, and their government shouldn't be immediately outing them to make it more dangerous.
Wait. You think people have a right to go to any country they want?
Assuming that the government approves their visa, et cetera, et cetera. Yet, not right.
Okay. I agree. If they approve their visa, right?
They have the liberty to go, I should say. A right is probably
assuming
the wrong
that
word.
Foreign government says we will grant you the visa.
Yeah, the liberty to.
Do people have a right to lie on their visa applications?
No, but the issue is that before the government didn't view that it was a lie, and now
well,
they do.
It is. Because we're not talking about gender on passports. You agree with that. We're talking about biological sex.
I'm advocating that essentially you probably should allow somebody like Blair White.
Different argument. You are upset that Donald Trump said you have to have your biological sex.
Undid something because it was already done.
Because they were putting fake sexes on passports. Essentially,
yeah, which would have been better if they did gender instead. I agree.
Okay, so then the issue is, which is this is where the contention is. You have a friend who wants a false biological sex listed on their passport, so they can defraud a foreign country into entering.
Not really. I want them to be able to have the liberty to go there, and that the moment that they go there, they won't...
The liberty to go there.
The liberty to go there.
At the permission of the government.
Both
who expects you to tell the truth on things like what your biological sex is.
For example, if your government just agrees that essentially you perform as a woman and they're willing to give you an F so that you can enter spaces safely and walk around and not be attacked for just how you appear, yes.
Do you think countries like the Emirates and Dubai appreciate the fact that people are lying about their gender to bypass?
Probably not. Probably not. So I just don't really... I don't care about like...
This is American exceptionalism. This is like American citizens can present false paperwork to foreign countries to get access to their nation.
It's not false paperwork if the government verifies it.
It is.
It's not.
So when the government says it, it's true.
On the passport, fundamentally.
If the government asserts something, it's a fact.
That's not what I've said.
And it's not true. The government can lie.
Well, Tim, do you want to engage with what I'm saying, or do you want to create a version
I think you're
of
lying.
I'm not lying.
An individual has no right to a foreign country, period.
I've never said that they have a right. They have a liberty to it.
A liberty to what?
To apply to go there.
And is lying to that government okay?
It's not lying if your government is willing to agree that essentially you can be...
Are males females?
No. They're not.
Okay, so if a male says I'm female, is that a lie?
Yes.
So if a person applies for a passport to the government who is male and says I'm female, is he lying?
It depends on if the government is willing to allow female to include woman. woman looking. And if
I'm talking about sexes, not genders.
Yeah, and if the government,
is it a lie
which is what
for a man?
I'm answering you. I'm answering you. Tim,
this is why men are leaving the
finish.
left.
You have to let me. Well, the issue is you have to let me talk, right? I'm engaging with you in exceptionally good faith.
This is why men are leaving the left.
I'm answering your questions directly, and I'm not pivoting away from them.
You are.
You just don't like my answers, which is totally okay.
A male who says I'm female is lying, because we're talking about biological sex.
Yes.
So if a male goes to the Saudi government and says I'm a female, he lied, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Do you think people have a right to lie to foreign governments to get visas?
To get visas, not usually. I'm sure there's some exceptions that I might be okay with it.
That you can lie to a foreign government to get a visa?
Yeah. So, for example, if you I think a lot of people lie to North Korea on their visas as to what they're doing, who are helping smuggle in information and helping freeing North Koreans, for an example.
So sure. To be fair, we're talking about subterfuge.
Actually, I shouldn't say anyone who does this, right? But there are people who do this to really extremist regimes like North Korea. In that case, they're lying on their visa. But I'm kind of okay with it, right? Because they're trying to help the North Koreans, right? So in this case, if you've got a country...
So it's an adversarial nation.
Yep.
And we have...
So if you've got a country that looks at trans people and says that they don't exist, and there is no way for Blair...
And this right here is the moment Tim completely buries her. He just lays it out, step by step. She backtracked on sex versus gender. She admitted that lying to foreign governments is sometimes okay. She claimed the US government should aid in that lie. And then she tries to defend it by bringing up people who lie on visas to sneak into North Korea to help dissidents. Dude, what? How is that even remotely comparable? Sneaking into a hostile regime to free political prisoners is not the same thing as getting a fake passport marker so you can be a war correspondent without disclosing your biological sex. One is a covert humanitarian operation. The other is, I want special treatment because my identity is more important than international law. And Tim nails it when he says this is why young men are leaving the left. Because you're watching someone make argument after argument that doesn't hold up under the smallest amount of scrutiny. She keeps moving the goalposts. First, it's about safety. Then it's about career access. Then it's about the government deciding what counts as truth. Then it's about lying to oppressive regimes. She never lands on a consistent principle because there isn't one. The principle is do whatever makes trans people feel validated, even if it requires the government to lie on official documents used in international treaties. That's the principle. And she can't just say that out loud because it sounds insane. So instead, she does this verbal dance where she tries to redefine terms mid-conversation and hope nobody notices. But Tim notices, and he doesn't let her off the hook. He keeps dragging her back to the core question. Is it a lie or not? And every time, she has to admit it is. But then she adds some qualifier about how it's okay to lie in this specific case. Look, I'm all for people living however they want in America. You want to transition? Fine. You want to be called whatever pronouns? I don't care. But when you start demanding that the federal government falsify legal documents so you can bypass the laws of other sovereign nations, you've lost the plot. You're not advocating for rights anymore. You're advocating for the government to institutionalize lying. And the fact that Kyla can't see how this pushes people away is exactly the problem. She thinks she's being compassionate. She thinks she's standing up for marginalized people. But what she's actually doing is defending a worldview where objective reality takes a backseat to subjective identity, and anyone who disagrees is a bigot. That's not sustainable. And that's why Tim wins this debate in a landslide. He stays grounded in logic. He doesn't budge on principles. And he forces her to confront the absurdity of her own position. Let me know in the comments, though. Do you think the government should ever put false information on passports?
Without us killing her, I'm okay lying a little bit to that country so that Blair can enter safely and do her job.
And the government should aid that lie.
Well, the lie would be... the issue is that the lie depends on how the government's determining what qualifies as F. If they're allowing basically woman-performing people to qualify as F for the sake of a passport, it's not really a lie.
I think this is a really great example of why young men are leaving the left. Because I'll just give you my personal feelings, which just how I interpret this moment right now.
Sure.
Your statements are illogical.
They're not. They're just not face valid. They're not face valid, right? Do you know what that means?
You've made a claim that you've backtracked a little bit. When you fluttered between gender and sex, you then said that we should change passports to be gender, not sex. You acknowledge that sex is different.
Sure, yeah. I should have baked in extra arguments.
You've asserted an entitlement to lie to foreign governments for access to their countries.
To some degree, yeah. You agreed to that, though, right?
So No, I didn't.
Yeah, you said, there's certain situations
I was
that you're going
acknowledging
to
what
lie.
you had said about people lying to get
So
into North
you don't
Korea.
think that people should lie to get into North Korea to like help aid those people in like freeing themselves from like the extreme oppression that North Koreans experience? Like you think it's bad when like humanitarians?
It wouldn't be morally bad, but it would be wrong. Yeah, I mean, like,
Well,
Why?
you shouldn't try to do. I mean, you're.
I mean, it's a question of the sovereignty of nations. I don't like North Korea.
Should America be like, hey, North Korea, just a heads up, these people,
I
careful, they're not entering just to do tourism. They actually
I think if we
wanna
have
help your people.
treaties with nations we are not actively at war with, we should do our best to adhere to them. And so the question of international treaties pertaining to visas, the idea that the U.S. government would permit people to lie on their passports, it's a weird thing to advocate for.
Sure. The issue is that, again, this is why
Like,
I
why
said,
lie on your passport? I don't understand.
why insist on having biology on your passport? Why not have gender?
Because there are laws in certain nations.
Why not have
pertaining-
both?
Because it's a redundancy. It's meaningless.
It's not redundant.
So you'd
right?
put, I'm a male woman.
All right, so let's wrap this up. Tim Pool absolutely demolished Kyla Turner in this debate. And it wasn't even close. From the jump, she was trying to defend an indefensible position, that the US government should falsify passport sex markers to help trans people enter countries with laws they don't like. And every single time Tim pressed her on the logic, she crumbled. She tried to pivot to gender versus sex. Didn't work. She tried to argue that government validation makes it not a lie. Didn't work. She tried to compare it to covert ops in North Korea. Didn't work. By the end, she was reduced to admitting that, yeah, it's lying, but it's okay because the laws are oppressive. And that's the core issue, right? The modern left has completely untethered itself from any consistent principle. It's all vibes and feelings. This law makes someone uncomfortable, so we should subvert it. This biological reality is inconvenient, so we should change the definition. This person might face consequences for their choices, so the government should intervene and protect them from reality. That's not a coherent worldview. That's just activism masquerading as policy. And Tim nails it when he says this is why young men are leaving the left. Because you can't build a coalition on arguments that collapse under the slightest scrutiny. You can't expect people to just accept that males are females if the government says so. You can't expect people to believe that lying on legal documents is fine as long as it's for a good cause. And you definitely can't expect people to think you're the reasonable one when you're advocating for the US to commit fraud on behalf of citizens who want to break foreign laws. This isn't about being anti-trans. This is about being pro-reality. If you're a biological male and you want to transition, that's your choice. But you don't get to force the rest of the world to pretend you're a biological female. You don't get to demand that governments lie on your behalf. And you don't get to act like it's oppression when a country with different laws enforces those laws. Kyla couldn't defend any of that, and Tim made sure everyone watching understood exactly why. This is the kind of debate that red pills people, because it's not hypothetical, it's not abstract. It's a real policy that affects real international relations. And the left's position is lie about biology to make people feel better. That's it. That's the whole argument. And it's embarrassing. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure you hit that like button, drop a comment letting me know what you thought, and subscribe to MB because we do this every single time. I'm not here to play nice. I'm here to call out the nonsense when I see it. And this was textbook nonsense. Stay sharp. I'll see you in the next one.